Hi, everyone, and welcome back to OncoDaily. My name is Ter-Azaryan, and I'm your host for today. Today, it's a great honor and pleasure for me to introduce our guest, Mark Veich, who's recently been appointed as the Chief Organizational Advancement Officer of Parker Institute for Cancer Immunotherapy. Hi, Mark. Nice to see you here in OncoDaily.
Nice to see you as well, Emma. Thanks for having me.
So I think we can start from the beginning. Can you take us back to the beginning? How did you first enter the field of nonprofit-driven healthcare and translational science, and what drew you to this path?
Absolutely. So I was driven to healthcare because I'm actually a grateful patient. I've benefited from a number of really incredible scientific advances and some incredible physicians who have helped me maintain a very healthy and strong kind of lifestyle now. But I didn't start in a lab. I went to work at institutions that have helped me. And I think of this as more of my way of giving back. And at those institutions, I started in, what I might call the engine room. My career began in higher education and academic medicine, first at Olivet College, then Michigan Medicine, and later Weill Cornell. And what really drew me to this specific niche of translational science was really frustration. In my academic roles, I constantly saw really brilliant research or science that could genuinely save lives, but really just kind of stall out. And it wasn't falling or failing because the science was bad. It was really failing because the business model was broken, what we call valley of death, where promising innovations really die because they're too early for pharma, too risky for traditional investors. And I realized that if I really wanted to cure patients, we just couldn't fund research. We had to fund the translation of that research. And really that, Emma, that realization drove me to Deerfield Management, and eventually, which is a healthcare investment firm, and eventually to launch the Advancing Health Network and Cobicure. And I wanted to build the bridge that carried those assets or discoveries across that valley.
So early in your career, were there specific mentors or maybe role models who shaped how you think about leadership and impact? What did you learn from them that still guides you till this very day?
Yeah, I was very fortunate to have mentors who operated at very different ends of the spectrum. I had an ex-father-in-law who was a true father figure to me, and he taught me that integrity and how you treat people are really the only currencies that matter in the long run. And professionally, I learned a great deal from the leadership at Deerfield Management and my fellow academic provosts that I worked with. And the big lesson was that Audacity is actually a strategy in the nonprofit world. And there's a tendency to be conservative with resources. And my mentors taught me if the goal is curing cancer or solving a rare disease, conservatism is actually risky. You have to be willing to make the economically irrational bet if a potential impact, human impact, is going to be high enough.
So your career spans philanthropic, capital, venture creator, and nonprofit leadership. When you step into high-stakes environments like in the Parker Institute, how would you describe your leadership style in practice?
It's a great question. I'd say my style is kind of bilingual, if you will. I spent my career sitting down between two groups that really often speak completely different languages. Scientists who really care about data, and then you've got investors who really care about sustainability and scale. And in practice, I lead by translation. I don't try to be the smartest person in the room, because certainly I'm not. At PICI, we have incredible network for that. My job is to clear the obstacles that are really in their path. I operate with very high transparency, high autonomy, I want to hire people who are smarter than me in their specific domains, but who also align with us on our mission, and then get out of their way. At PICI, we have stakeholders ranging from Nobel laureates to tech billionaires. The ability to bridge cultures is everything.
And I want to congratulate you on your new role. And as you step into this new role at Parker Institute, what excites you most personally about the opportunity to help shape the Institute's next decade?
Well, thank you. I'm also very excited about it. And what excites me is that PICI has really already solved the hardest part. My experience at Advancium, I was focused on rescuing individual assets, fighting the battle really one drug at a time. And PICI has built an entire ecosystem that does this at scale. Sean Parker didn't just build a charity. He built a machine that breaks down silos between the best academic institutions in the world. And personally, I want to take the machine that Sean built and make it permanent. The first decade at PICI was really about proving that the model works. They've had 17 companies with about $4 billion raised. So it clearly knows how to do this. But the next decade is going to be about sustainability. And I want to build really a financial engine that ensures that PICI is here to cure cancers 50 years from now, regardless of who is in charge. I think we have an incredible opportunity to extend the legacy of the Parker Institute for really generations to come.
I mean, as we know, PICI brings together scientists, donors, industry partners, and entrepreneurs. What is the hardest leadership challenge in aligning such diverse stakeholders around a single mission?
I think the hardest challenge clearly is going to be aligning incentives. Academics and researchers and scientists are incentivized to publish. If you think about industry, really industry is incentivized to protect IP and, even more importantly, generate profit. Philanthropists, they want to make an impact as quickly as possible. And I think left alone, those incentives pull in three different directions. So the challenge and really the magic of PICI is creating a structure where everybody wins together, where we can add value to all of those stakeholders. We have to show that that the academic, that by sharing data, they get to the clinic faster. If we show an industry partner that by working with us, they can acquire de-risked assets. So my job is really, at least the way that I see it, is to remind everybody that the patient is really the only stakeholder that matters. When you put the patient in the center, the other incentives, in my view, tend to fall into line.
I want to ask you and know your opinion. I mean, when resources are limited and the science is promising but uncertain, how do you decide which programs to advance, which to pause, or maybe to stop?
Well, that really is the toughest part of the job. And you have to be ruthless about the data. We use a venture philanthropy mindset. We set clear kill or cure milestones. If a program misses a milestone, we really can't keep funding it just because we love the story or the team. We really have to be willing to terminate projects early so we can redeploy that capital to something that's working. And it's not about being cold. It's really about being responsible responsible stewards of the capital that we've been gifted to make an impact with. So every dollar that gets spent, and it's not clear that it's going to be spent on a potential cure, I think we just have to make tough decisions on which direction to go. And I think, again, PICI is uniquely positioned and has already been doing this very effectively.
Well, as we know, You've built and led teams across healthcare, academia, and biotech. What qualities do you prioritize most when assembling leadership teams in mission-driven organizations?
I think I look, for resilience. I look for low ego. In this work, you fail more than you're going to succeed. And that's the nature of developing therapies or drug development. You need leaders who can take a punch, learn from the data, get back to the next day. And I look for people who are comfortable with ambiguity. We're building models that have never existed before. There's really no playbook. And I really need people who can build the plane while we're flying it, as the expression goes.
Your work in rare and pediatric diseases often involves long timelines and delayed gratification. How do you personally measure leadership success when outcomes may take years to emerge?
Yeah, definitely in the pediatric or rare space it's really a challenge. But I measure success, I think, by velocity. We can't control the biology, and sometimes the science just doesn't work. But we can control speed. Do we get to the answer, yes or no, faster than a traditional system would have? Did we get to it? Can we get a trial open in 6 months instead of 2 years? And if I can look back and say, we've accelerated the timeline by 2 years, that's success, regardless of clinical outcomes, because time is one thing that these families don't have.
So across your career, is there a leadership lesson you learned the hard way, one that fundamentally changed how you operate today?
Yeah, I would say perfect is the enemy of good. Early in my career in academic settings, at Michigan or Weill Cornell, we would have studied a problem to death. We wanted the perfect strategy, the perfect consensus. But in the time we spent deliberating, patients ultimately were waiting. I learned that in this space, you have to be willing to act on 80% of the information. If you have to wait, if you're going to wait and be willing to launch the initiative, start a fund, sign the partnership before it's perfect, it's a challenge. Momentum has a quality all on its own. So today I really have a bias or a heavy bias towards action.
I would like to ask a little bit more personal questions.
Sure.
Besides the work that you do, which is amazing and very inspiring, what about your work-life balance? Like, what hobbies do you have?
Well, I believe you need to disconnect to be effective. So I spend a lot of time doing a few things. I love playing golf. I'm a bit of a horology enthusiast. I collect watches and Rolexes and other timepieces for years. I really appreciate the engineering and history behind them. I think there's some amazing stories around the watch industry. I'm also a big fan of live music, especially electronic music. It surprises people, but I find the energy of a show from someone like, Fisher or John Summit to be really a great reset. And wherever I can and whenever I can, I travel. So I spend a lot of time in Europe, and I love spending time with my family. So any opportunity I have to disconnect and be with all of them is time well spent.
And in which countries you love to spend your time most? While traveling.
I've been a huge fan the last couple of years of Paris, France. I've developed so many great friends and meaningful relationships there, and I just love every moment I can to visit.
Yeah, so personally, I've also been in Paris, and when I went there, it was like winter during New Year, and it was very cold. So I think maybe I should go there during summer, Yeah, so to close on a more personal note, are there books like leadership, science, or otherwise that have most influenced how you think and how you work?
There are. I've finished a couple recently. One that was called The $1 Trillion Coach. It was written by Schmidt, Rosenberg, and Eagle. And given my profound interest in Eric Schmidt's work, This book on Bill Campbell resonates with me deeply. It's really about the human side of managing high-performing teams. And then I also read a book called The Emperor of All Modalities. It's really a biography of cancer. It reminds me of the history that we're up against and how fatal this disease is. And we need to find a cure for it. And then I'm currently reading a book called Loonshots. And this essentially is a playbook for what we're doing at PICI and how to structure an organization to nurture kind of these crazy industries that we're in and try to do it in a really effective and efficient way. But that's what I'm currently reading right now. But I love spending time reading books. So I love that you asked that question.
So before we finish, is there something maybe you would like to share with us that we didn't discuss, or something you would like to say to our audience or maybe young professionals?
Well, I would just say to young professionals in particular, because I've always been a fan of hosting interns in the work that I do. And I would love for more people to get involved in the work that PICI is doing in particular. Even though there have been many advances in science, and in particular cancer, they've been just that, advances in science. And like I said in our interview, science is not the problem, right? It's creating financial structures and new methods or alternative capital structures to really solve this problem. And again, I think the more that young people can double click on this problem and really learn about it, because I think the future of solving big societal problems like healthcare, we're going to need to really get creative and learn new strategies on how to bridge the divide between great science and an appropriate investment to bring those sciences to patients, who need them most.
Thank you, Mark. It was very great pleasure for me to talk to you today, and it was very inspiring to hear about your story and the work that you do. Thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to OncoDaily on YouTube. Hit the bell icon to stay updated.